Welcome to the Seminarian Convos podcast. In this podcast, we share what we've learned on our theological journey as both independent Baptists and Southern Baptists.
And boy, have we learned one lesson. And the lesson we're going to share with you today, you will probably be offended. It is not our goal to offend you or anybody else. It is not our goal to speak against anybody particular or any institution. But it is our goal to address an issue that much needs addressed, desperately needs addressed. It's an issue that comes from anti-intellectualism and that plagues several different denominations of Christianity in America. It's the issue of honorary doctorates. Everybody is a doctor anymore. Everybody's called doctor. You see so many professors called doctor at Bible colleges. They have the title doctor on their college website. The title doctor is on their class syllabuses. And the books that are published in-house all have doctor plastered all over their name. I didn't think anything of it at all until I decided to go to a seminary. When I started at Southwestern, I was like, hey, there's no big deal. We have doctors. Also, I was used to that. And then I realized a lot of the content was so much better, that I was getting so much deeper. And then I realized something, that a lot of the professors here have books out by reputable publishers. Publishers like Zondervan, Kregel, Baker Books, Crossway, B&H Academic. And all of the books that I was reading from the prior, quote, doctors before were all self-published. Not a single one of them has a single book from a reputable publisher. And I started to look into the more, just curious why. And I found out a lot of them are not real doctors. They have an honorary degree.
And this is an act which I believe would be correctly labeled as fraud. According to Merriam-Webster, fraud is an act of deceiving or misrepresenting, trickery, a person who is not what he or she pretends to be, an imposter, one who defrauds, one that is not what it seems to be or is represented to be. Fraud sounds like a very harsh term.
Yeah, fraud does sound very harsh. But it's not our goal, once again, we're not condemning anybody, we're not being harsh, and listen, these people are also really genuine good people. They're good pastors. They're good preachers. They are some of the best people I know. They are good practitioners of ministry. But that does not mean they have the academic credentials to be called doctor. To assume that title. The title doctor was never associated with the honorary degree. You were not supposed to assume the title with an honorary degree. So when we say fraud, we're not saying that these people are frauds in everything. We're saying academically they are less than genuine. They are less than what they appear to be, what they are presented as.
Yes.
Aristotle has 3 means of persuasion in rhetoric. He wrote these means of persuasion in rhetoric. Any public speaker needs to really know these. Any public speaker, especially preachers or teachers, if you get up and speak and teach others, you have to know these 3 means of persuasion. The first one is logos. That is the logical content. Are the words that you say when you speak, do they make sense? Are your arguments logical? Because if your arguments are not logical and your words don't make sense, no one's going to listen. You're not going to persuade anybody. The second one is pathos. That's the emotive content, the emotion. A lot of people call it passion. A good illustration of this is a tear-jerker illustration. If you've ever had an illustration or sat in a sermon where a preacher pulled an illustration that really just connected to you and moved you emotionally, that is a powerful means of persuasion. So there's logos, that's a logical content. Pathos, that's the emotional content of a message. And then the third one is called ethos. That is the credibility of the speaker. You can have the most logical argument and you can be a tearjerker preacher or teacher. But if you don't have the personal credibility, if your listeners cannot or don't trust you, you are going to persuade nobody. And you can preach the best message or teach the best lesson that has ever been taught, and it will be for naught. Because unless they can trust you as the speaker, unless you have good personal character, they will not listen. But if you do have good ethos, if you have established good credibility, people trust you and they want to listen to you. And it's around this ethos, this credibility of the speaker, that honorary doctorates really come into play. Because an honorary doctorate attempts to manufacture credibility. It's a fake credential. It is not genuine. And this is where, when people actually realize that they have been lied to or tricked, whether that trickery is intentional or unintentional. I'm not saying that everybody that has an honorary doctorate is a bad person. Please understand. But academically, they are not a doctor unless they have an earned one.
Right.
And when people realize that, you're going to lose all of your credibility.
When you go as an undergrad student, this is not a topic that you usually would consider. You kind of go in trusting that those that you are going to for your education are who they say they are. And not that you're necessarily naive, but you're not so much into everything. I mean, most times as a freshman, you're just doing good to make it through your classes. But if you consider getting further education after Bible college or after an undergrad, it's natural to look at where your instructors receive their higher education.
Yeah.
In my case, come to find out, many of them that I had called doctor all throughout my 4 years in Bible college only had honorary doctorates. And unfortunately, this is very prevalent all across the board with Bible colleges and Bible institutes, large and small. And the biggest problem with honorary degrees is that if you allow yourself to be called by that title, doctor, and you haven't actually earned the degree, when somebody finds out you are using false pretenses, it brings everything you say and do into question. Your ethos is immediately taken away from you. I know for me personally, this was a struggle in leaving the bubble that I had been in Bible college and afterwards. And I started to question a lot of things, even the fundamentals of the faith. For a very short time, I was struggling with a lot of things, and I'm being pretty vulnerable in sharing this. I knew in my heart and mind, and according to God's word, that those things were true, and that just because somebody who had said it to me, even though they paraded themselves as somebody that they weren't, that did not make God's word untrue. And I could ground myself in the fact that God's word is always true, and I'm so thankful for that. But it did definitely shake my faith and make me start to wonder, well, what else was I taught in my undergrad that wasn't true, that was under false pretenses? And the history of honorary doctorates is very interesting. So where did honorary doctorates originate?
Well, the first honorary degrees were not doctorates. My church history professor, Jonathan Arnold, he has an MA and his PhD, his Doctor of Philosophy, from Oxford University. So he was one thing he likes to do is he likes to just tell us all kinds of stories and show us slides from the campus there. And one of the things that he told us was, when we were studying history of English Bible, we were talking about all kinds of just people that God used to translate the scriptures. And I remember he was talking about Richard Rolle, who became a hermit and just spent his life to translating the scriptures. But it's interesting because in studying out Richard Rolle, he lived about in the 1300s. University of Oxford, some consider to be the second oldest institution. The first was University of Paris. And what happened was, back then, you had to have a master's degree in order to teach in the church. Clergy had to have a master's degree. And all of the other institutions, you did your undergrad, and then you added on a master's degree, like we would today. But the University of Oxford was so rigorous that their undergraduate, most of the time, was better than a master's degree from anywhere else. Sometimes it would be equal, but most of the time it was better. So these are people who did the undergraduate at the University of Oxford and did the most rigorous undergraduate that was better than most master's degrees. They would go off to ministry, and after 2 years, if they were still faithful in ministry, they would be granted a master's degree. That is the first honorary degree, and it was given to clergy. But make no mistake, the honorary degree was not given because of their accomplishments in ministry. It was given because of their accomplishments already in the classroom. So they did complete the education for it. They did. That's the story of the first honorary degree. Now, back 100 years ago, really 50 years ago, honorary doctorates, a doctor of divinity, it actually meant something. But now, they're given out like candy on bus routes. They are just given out. I've seen institutions that don't even have doctoral programs.
That's actually quite common, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they give out doctors of divinities. They don't even have a doctoral program. And it's funny because I've seen people give out doctoral degrees, doctor of divinities, and they don't even have a doctoral program, nor do they even have a doctorate
of anyone on their staff.
Yeah, so there's a danger here because do you have to know what a doctorate is? These people don't even know what a doctorate is. And they're giving it to others? So it has just evolved into something that it was never intended to be. It's a sad drift and it's a sad trend, but it is one that must be addressed because it's hurting the cause of Christ. And it's plaguing several different denominations.
Yes.
Mark Ward wrote an excellent article, and he cited 2 reasons why honorary doctorates are often bad. We're going to name them real quick, and then we're going to go through them. First reason is most people won't know the difference between an honorary degree and a real one. The second one is honorary doctorates are often awarded to those without a real doctorate, and therefore they have not completed the coursework. Both of these are so true. Going back to what you said earlier, Rebecca, that most people don't know what an honorary, if it's an honorary one or not. I didn't. I came to Bible college at 23 years old. I didn't know. And you know what? I wasn't skeptical. The people that honorary degrees really hurt are not only the teachers, but they're the students that come and put themselves under the teaching, and the ones with good hearts.
Yes.
The ones that genuinely come in and trust these people, that listen to what they have to say, the ones that grant them this credibility, and that trust them to say, wow, you have studied this out. Wow, you know what you're talking about. Wow, you are a real doctor. Teach me. And then to find out that it's not true.
It's like stolen valor, which is illegal. If you're trying to put yourself out there as a military person and wear their uniform or perform their roles in some way, shape, or form, and you are not in any way, shape, or form associated with the military, nor have you ever been, that's known as stolen valor. It's the same thing as those that would impersonate a police officer. You can get yourself in some big trouble for that. And, if I was to exercise in my backyard and I print it off on the internet, oh, these are the military standards, I'm meeting these, does that make me a Marine?
No.
I don't think so. No boot camp, but hey, I'm really in really good shape. I know that I'm meeting these military standards. I'm pretty sure I'm as good as any Marine out there. I'm a Marine, right?
You seem disciplined. I'm going to start calling you a Marine, Rebecca.
And that's a lifetime title that I'll keep with me.
Yeah, when you go to boot camp for the Marines, even if you join the reserves, you go to the boot camp, you finish the boot camp for the Marines, the basic training. You claim the title at the end, United States Marine. And that is a title that you have for life. And only those who complete the rigorous training of Marine Corps basic training claim that title. Just because somebody considers you equal it does not give you the right to hold that title. In fact, it's a federal offense if you do. It's stolen valor.
And I would venture to say that a lot of graduation ceremonies, sadly, at Bible colleges, are a gross example of stolen scholarship. So many of them out come paraded, all these people in doctoral robes, and they have never once done the academic work to earn a doctorate. And it's just a sad state of affairs when this is Bible colleges, often based out of churches, and what a shame to fake it.
It is a shame. Churches, listen, we as ministers of the gospel, what doesn't matter if you're a pastor or a teacher.
It's supposed to be above reproach.
Absolutely. We should have the highest levels of personal credibility. Our character is on the line and we represent Jesus Christ himself. How dare we parade ourselves around like that?
And this is a day and age where people are not going to accept things at face value. The younger generation, although I don't agree with a lot of what's happened in our nation, it's a good thing for them to say, hang on a second. We're not going to just take everybody that's been held up as a great example if they had some major flaws in their life. Let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think you should be a type of person, if you're serving in ministry, where there is no good, bad, and ugly that you're hiding. And you're trying to put on this good veneer of something that you're not. And I think claiming the title that you haven't earned is also a slap in the face. I mean, I don't have a PhD. I don't have a doctor of ministry. And I don't know. I think if I had put in the work and had one of those titles and I see somebody who's parading around saying that they are and they didn't earn that, I would feel like that's a slap in the face, knowing that I put in a lot of hard work and effort to get that academic degree.
Yeah, it cheapens the title.
Damon Richardson is a guy we ran across. He has a YouTube video called "Is There a Doctor in the House?" and he really deals with some tough truths about this problem.
Yeah, his ministry is Urban Lagia Ministry. And by the way, this brother, has a PhD in leadership. He knows what ethos is. He knows what credibility is. He knows the qualifications that leaders ought to have. He's very, very credible. But I'm warning you, that video is a nuclear bomb.
It will offend too.
But it's full of truth.
Yes.
And he addresses it. So after you finish this, you absolutely must watch that video. He has all kinds of other good content on his channel too.
Yes.
But you
it's
absolutely
called "Is There a
must.
Doctor in the House?" So point number one, most people won't know the difference between an honorary doctorate and a real one. And then also, number two, honorary doctorates are often awarded to those without a real doctorate degree, and therefore they have not completed the coursework. We can talk a lot about that. I know for me, when I first heard of honorary doctorates, I assumed that it was to those who had done some sort of major work that would have been equivalent to what it takes to earn a PhD. Maybe they were on the mission field and they did a full translation of the Bible and they never were at a place to get higher education. They didn't desire that. They were so busy serving in the work of the Lord, and they did some huge contribution to Christianity as a whole. And I always assumed, well, that's what honorary doctorates are. And so somebody that's earned it has done the equivalent of what would need to be done to earn a real doctorate. I didn't realize that they were handed out so freely and so often.
Yeah, they're given out very, very, very often. Way too often. And there is incentive for institutions. Hey, if this guy is successful in ministry, if we give him an honorary doctorate, we're going to attach him to our institution. And there is motivation to advance their own cause. But they are given out so often. Listen, Kermit the Frog, the Muppet, is an honorary doctor. He was officially given an honorary doctorate.
That's Dr. Kermit to you.
Hey, I'm not going to call him that. But there are entire lists of animals that have been awarded honorary doctorates. Listen, honorary doctorates are a joke. If you want to honor somebody and give them honor to whom honor is due, great. I think it's actually more respectful to give them a different kind of an award.
Yeah.
because otherwise you're really contributing to a system, and really you're setting him up for failure. Because if he does not already have a doctorate degree, if he does not already have the credentials, you're putting that person in such a temptation to be a fraud, to be a fake. That is not helping somebody.
Yeah. And unfortunately, those that suffer the most from an honorary doctorate are the people that sit under that leader who's received that honorary doctorate and chosen to use the title. The congregants in their churches.
Yeah, they suffer.
They aren't getting the same content that they would be getting from somebody who had actually done the coursework. Their students in their Bible college, Bible institute, whatever they choose to call their institution of learning that they teach at, they're being fooled into thinking that they're getting something that they're really not. So for the average person that might be looking on a college website, how can you tell if somebody has an honorary doctorate?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they're not going to say honorary doctorate. There's several different ways you can tell. Here's some clues. First, if the degree says DD, that's a Doctor of Divinity. That is an honorary doctorate. If they really want to honor somebody, they'll give them what's called a Doctor of Letters. Sometimes you hear it said a D.Lit or a Doctor of Letters. That is an honorary doctorate also. It's funny, Damon Richardson says in that video, he says, a DD stands for didn't do it. So if you see DD, Doctor of Divinity, they didn't do it. That is honorary. Number 2, if they publish books and if they're all self-published, that is a big sign right there, especially if it says that doctor and does not list an institution.
Yeah, most people, if you put in the work for a doctorate, you're proud of the institution where you earned it.
Absolutely. You don't want to hide that. It's a doctor from there. It's a good thing. That is credible.
And it gives credibility to your institution as well. These are the graduates. This is the sort of thing that they produce.
Correct.
These are the kinds of books and materials they produce.
And one word about self-publishing there. Self-publishing is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. But in a situation like this, it can really contribute to something to make somebody seem like a scholar when they're not. And it can contribute to pseudo-scholarship. So if they have the D.Lit or the Doctor of Divinity, it's honorary. If you can't find what institution they went to, if it just says doctor, but there's no other information, 9 times out of 10, that's a big red flag right there.
Or if the institution does not have a doctoral program when you look at their programs.
Big one right there, yeah. If you've never heard them talk about their dissertation, they're probably not a real doctor. Because you spend a significant part, you pour your life into that dissertation, and you have it checked and you defend it by experts in the field. You hear about what they wrote their dissertation on. And if you never do, then they don't have one. They didn't do one. And then lastly, if they never mention their dissertation supervisor or just talk about their time, it's a very influential time to be formed. And if they never talk about it, probably a red flag right there.
And honorary doctorates in the beginning were never really you weren't supposed to assume the title of doctor. Print your name, Dr. So-and-so, if you had an honorary doctorate.
Yes, and it's an honorary doctorate degree, but it's not a degree. And this is the big thing. It's not a degree. It's an award.
Yes.
And it should never be listed as the, education. If you see education, and if that's listed under their education, there is no education associated with an honorary degree. That is an award. And the honest person will list that not under education credentials, but they will call it an award because that's exactly what it is.
I think the most heartbreaking thing of this scenario is when people discover that you have not been honest, that you have called yourself doctor, and you have not ever done the work that it takes to earn a doctorate degree. All you have is an honorary. Then you start to lose that ethos like we talked about. Your credibility goes way down, and people are going to start to wonder, well, what else are you not being honest about? And unfortunately, a lot of the people, at least in my life experience, that use these titles, they don't even need to use the title. people would give them all sorts of credibility because of their ministry experience, because of
Absolutely.
some of the things that they've written. They don't need this fake title.
Absolutely. Especially like at Bible colleges. Listen, you don't need to be a doctor to teach at a Bible college. You don't need to be a doctor to be a pastor.
Exactly.
Some of the best pastors I know do not have doctorates. And you know what? That's okay. If you love the Lord and you walk openly honest with them and you be above reproach, they will grant you that credibility, that ethos. And if you have the anointing of God and you walk humbly before God, you don't need to be called doctor. You don't need it. Even by the regional accreditation is the highest accreditation there is. Did you know that even in regionally accredited institutions like Ohio State University, like Yale, like all these institutions that are regionally accredited, you know you only need a master's degree to teach at the undergraduate level? You don't need a doctorate degree.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, which is just so ironic to me, is so many times we were told it's not about titles, by the very same people that were claiming a title that they did not have the right to claim.
Yeah. And that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. I hope that nobody finds their identity in a title, specifically in a title that is not genuine.
Yeah.
Our identity should be in Jesus Christ. And our credibility comes from the Bible, from God himself and his inspired word. I wasn't trying to say the Bible is God, by the way. But it comes from his commission on us.
Yes.
To go and to preach. And we need to have the personal character and credibility to be like Christ. And that doesn't come from a title.
Exactly. Well, as we wrap up today's convo, we always want to share some helpful resources with our listeners. We've already mentioned a couple things during this convo today. So why don't you give us just a recap of some of those resources that we will link in the show notes today?
Yes. So there's Mark Ward's article is linked in the show notes there. Definitely read that. We kind of summarized a little bit there, but definitely read that. He's a very credible guy there. Damon Richardson's video, Urban Lagia, Is There a Doctor in the House? You absolutely must listen to that. If you don't listen to one other thing this week, listen to that. You will be glad you did. And I did link another one in there in the another article in the show notes. It's from a website I'm not really sure about. I'm not crazy familiar with it. Some apologetics website. But I'll tell you this. The article is pretty sound. There's a lot of truth in the article. So don't judge me about the website. But the article is really pretty sound. So I put that in there. Just take that with a grain of salt. But it's a pretty solid article.
And in our next episode, we will cover a topic that really goes hand in hand with the honorary doctorates, and that is diploma mills, which is almost as bad.
Yeah, it's really shady. It's even more controversial. Honorary doctorates, it's very cut and dry. You did it, or you didn't do it.
Exactly.
But diploma mill seminaries are...
You did something, but what was it?
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to tackle that. So tune in for that and don't miss it. And thanks for joining us for today's convo.